I was experiencing also a lot of domestic violence at home. And my dad basically was an alcoholic. He used to hit my mom, and bad memories of that. When I started in high school, I remember I met a boy. I told him, you know what, I want to go with you to the church. My first time in that church, I was amazed because I felt the presence of God there. It was real. And the first thing I asked God was, I want a miracle. I don't want my dad drinking anymore. And I was amazing after that because since that moment, my dad never got drunk again home.
Wow. Sí, amigos. Bienvenidos. That means welcome to another episode of ChristianPodcast.com. We're so happy you're here. And guess what? Today is going to be an awesome episode. I'm from Mexico, from Guadalajara, Mexico. And today I'm going to be talking to a fellow Mexican who lives in Tucson, Arizona, and who happens to be a Christian rocker in Spanish. So we're going to learn his story. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his experience, maybe even being here in the US, about his travels, about his findings as a Christian. It's going to be so epic. So welcome to the show. Oh, yeah. So we have Rodrigo Silva. And Rodrigo, I just want to say this before we get deep dive into our talk today. We just had an episode in Spanish that we recorded because we are both like Spanish speaking, right? So that's a good advertisement for our other stream of the show, completely in Spanish, where I do episodes with my wife weekly. So you can find that on ChristianPodcast.com and then just click where it says En Español, and you're gonna find like busloads of episodes that we have in Spanish. Actually, our Spanish, and you would figure, right? Our Spanish show is growing even more than our English one. It's growing quicker and rapidly. One, because my wife is with me in the show, and second, because it's our first language. It's our mother language. Okay, so if you want to check out our episode with our friend right here, you can check it out, ChristianPodcast.com. En español. Rodrigo, how are you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Beto, I'm pretty excited. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, and thanks for that Spanish show we had. I had an amazing time with you guys.
Awesome. Well, you know me. We're going to go to our emoji tombola to choose the emoji for today. Okay, so are you guys ready? What is going to be the emoji that we have for today? Let's run the emoji tombola. And it's the inspired emoji. Inspired emoji to kick off the show. So fun. Okay, Rodrigo, what is the idea behind inspired emoji? Why do you feel inspired?
Okay, well, related to what I do, which is music. In order to write songs, because I'm a singer or songwriter, it's essential to combine inspiration with technique and methodology. Of course, you not necessarily need inspiration in order to do songs, to write songs. You can use your skills, technique, methodology, and professionalism, but if you combine inspiration with it, you can create something very special in people's hearts. So that's what I need, inspiration.
Love it, to create something special in people's hearts. Man, that's profound right there. Love it. All right. So, Rodrigo, I mean, we were talking yesterday, and I even see you right now. You're wearing this shirt that says Marley, and I'm assuming it's Bob Marley. Yep. One Love, right there.
It is.
So you're a full-on musician. Like, you have this passion for music. Yesterday we were talking in Spanish about a little bit of your journey living in the U.S., but also, I mean, your trajectory as a musician is pretty epic, you know. And I had a few musicians here on the show here and then, but I think you're the first Mexican musician, other than myself, you know, being on the show, where your story is pretty epic. I mean, in a sense, it's almost like, maybe not, I don't know if it's the American dream, but the musician dream, right? Like traveling, visiting other countries. And what is that been like for you, especially taking it from like a Latino point of view? Right? Is that any different maybe than the typical American who travels the world doing music and stuff? Like, is there anything to your own journey, or just tell us about that journey of music?
Well, first and foremost, I not only consider myself a musician, but also a songwriter, a singer-songwriter. I consider myself also a music producer. I mix music. So... and now with all this technology, I'm starting doing my own mastering. So for me, it's been a pretty good experience. You know, being a musician here in the States, it's a total blessing. I've been totally blessed all these years because we're in a country of opportunities. So and I think that people respect what we do. And of course, in other countries, when I was living in Mexico, also I had pretty good experiences. But when I got here, I grew up a lot. And yeah, I think being traveling to different places in the world has opened a lot my eyes and the power you have through the music to touch the people, to touch their hearts. So it's been a pretty amazing experience.
Yes. So I want to know, people are going to be listening from all over the place. And it's just like I was saying, when you go to your website, you're playing in Lakewood Church in front of thousands of people, right? And I don't know, for some people, maybe it's like, I don't know, Latinos, their thing is a little bit smaller scale than typical Anglo projections with music and stuff like that. But your journey has been pretty amazing. So, just in regards to that, I mean, what are some of the this is not just to throw like flowers like we say in Mexico, right? Because I'm doing this with a purpose, but just to open up people's minds, like just tell us some of the achievements, in a sense, if you may, that you have accomplished as a musician, because I think those are pretty, I think it's pretty awesome to say this is what God has granted me, or the blessings that God has allowed me to live, right?
Yeah, well, the achievements, I've seen, the best thing for me is when people come to you and tell you what had happened in their life when they've been listening to your music. I remember a guy who once came to me and told me, you know what, me and my wife were almost to divorce, and listening to your music, something changed inside of me. So I got inspired. Now that we're talking about the inspiring emoji, I got inspired again, and we're still together. So all those changes that we can produce through the music is something that keep me motivated on doing this. And I've seen this because I had the opportunity to travel to different places, different countries like Central America, South America. I've been in a lot of cities in Mexico, here in the US. We've been in Canada, in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, in Spain. So, and I've seen all those testimonies from people. So that's, for me, that's the main achievements. And that keeps, that's still my goal, to go and understand people's needs. And yeah, that's why I keep doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. So this is so interesting, because you're talking about like a very specific purpose when it comes to music, which is technically, like you're saying, inspire people. And
Yeah.
I think you're very focused when I hear your lyrics, and they're in Spanish, right? And I mean, do you have any in English,
Yep.
like where people can find your music in English, or no?
Yeah, I wrote the song, and actually that's my last my new single. Its name is Resilient, in Spanish, Resilientes, and that's curious because that's the first song I wrote in English, mainly in English. I mean, because sometimes you write a song in, let's say, in your main language, in my case in Spanish, and then you translate the lyrics. But in this case, because I have two daughters, one is 12 and the other one is 10, and the older one came to me and she told me, you know, I like to sing a song, and I wrote the song because we were during the pandemic, during the COVID-19 pandemic, and she told me, I like to sing a song. They're learning to play piano in different disciplines, and when I wrote that song, I loved it a lot. That I told her, you know what, it's going to be for me. I'm going to record it, not you. She was like, okay. And I recorded that song, and we did a music video, which is amazing. And yeah, I hope you like that song once you hear it. And it talks precisely about hope, because every one of us need hope. And we're in pretty difficult times, and we're experiencing different changes in the world, in society. And we have to keep resilient ourselves. We need to be strong in order to overcome all the challenges in life.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's so cool. So, in terms of your, like this writing, it's so interesting because, like, even yesterday we were talking about how you're a singer-songwriter, and you have this approach to music that is very poetic. Right, even your song "Resilientes" or "Resilient," like it's not. Even though you're a Christian, maybe it's not like a typical worship song, right? Where you're mentioning God or you're mentioning Jesus in every word. So that's so interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. But that's funny because one day a guy came to me and he told me, you know what, Rodrigo, I love your music because when the people listen to it, it doesn't look like a Christian song, so I can raise the volume and nobody notices.
It's like subtle, right? But that's so powerful because you were saying, like yesterday, you said something like if I would sing a song to my wife, her name doesn't necessarily need to be in the song, right? And no, Gladys or Gladys or no, whatever your wife's name is, like people don't usually write Gladys with their, just repeating their name, even though there's songs like that, right? I mean, I don't know, Grace or whatever name it might be, which is awesome. But that just out of curiosity, like what do you witness here in the U.S.? Like you said you've been here, what, like 20 years in the U.S.?
Yes, 20 years, yeah.
Okay, so 20 years in the U.S.
2003.
Wow. That's a long time, right? So in those years, like doing the type of music that you do, but then also witnessing maybe the type of music that we listen to here in the U.S. And I think even the 2000s were almost like a tiebreaker in the music industry, especially like the Christian music industry, where most of the music maybe back then was a little bit like, and that would be kind of fun to know, like what were your influences, if there were any. But let's say most of the music, the Christian music, was a little bit more like that, like poetic, not necessarily mentioning God in every sentence. So in a sense, not like worship music. But I think in the 2000s, something started happening where it was almost like everything shifted to, okay, now we do songs that we sing in church only, even though they're still rock songs. But, we mention Jesus in every other sentence, or we mention God, or we praise him, which is awesome, right? That we have those type of songs. But I think it kind of pulled away from the songs that were a little bit more poetic, or people were writing, not necessarily for a congregation, but just in sense reflecting on God. So yeah, what have you witnessed in those 20 years here?
Well, now that you're talking about, there's an expression in Spanish. I don't know how to translate it to English, but it says "poner el dedo en la llaga." How do you say it? How will you say
like
it?
Put the finger on the wound?
I think so. Well, and I'll do that right now because the worship, of course, worship music is necessary in church because we need to worship God. That's one of the ways we worship God, and I love that. Actually, I started as worshiper, doing worship at church when I was 19. That was the first way I started in music. Well, not necessarily, but in Christian music. And when you see that there's a lot of worship music and not too many poetic music or like normal music giving a message to people, because the worship music is like the mainstream in the Christian world. Like in the secular world, you can see that at the moment in the US is pop music. If you do rock, it's like you're a little bit out of fashion, right? And in Latin America, it's reggaeton. But in Christian music, the mainstream is worship. So, but I've been doing this type of music, writing like more poetic lyrics since I started. Because I don't know, maybe it's because my personality, maybe because I'm melancholic. Did I say right? Melancholic or introverted. So, but I do a lot of energetic music too, but there's always that element of poetry. And it's challenging because sometimes you're not invited to all the events in the Christian world. So sometimes you have to go, and that's the amazing thing for me, because I've been in a lot of secular events. And I've been opening concerts. Like one day I was in Miami, Florida, in the American Airlines Arena, and I opened a concert for Alejandro Sanz. I don't know if people is related with that singer. He's from Spain. So it was a huge sea of people there. And I opened that concert singing my songs, and I had an amazing experience. So that type of doors have been open to me doing this type of lyrics, this type of music. So the great thing of this is that there's an opportunity to me to share with others the gospel and to share the word of God. So,
wow, yes. So, do you think maybe some Christians here in the U.S. are taking first, let's go to. Do you have any influences? Like for me, it would be back in my days, maybe like Michael W. Smith, DC Talk, Jars of Clay, Switchfoot. What are some of, like, do you have any like Christian rock influences in a sense, like American or otherwise?
In the Christian area, I remember listening to DC Talk. Do you remember Jesus Freak?
Yes.
I love that project. And POD.
Oh, okay.
POD, I don't know if they're still playing, but yeah, but I used to listen a lot of rock of the 90s in Mexico. Caifanes. Do you remember Caifanes? Yes. What's the name of this band? Phobia. A lot of Mexican bands, rock bands. And here in the US, DC Talk, POD, Bob Marley. He's not Christian, but music is music. And I listen to a lot of music. I love classical music, and I do a lot of all those influences in my music. And sometimes I don't have a whole orchestra to record to put in my songs, but synthesizers is a good help these days. But yeah, you need to listen a lot of music in order to create different colors in music, and that's the way that people connect with you. That's the way that the people engage with you, and that's the opportunity for them to hear the lyrics.
Mm-hmm. Wow! So you would say that? So you mentioned in regards to your own music being basically different than worship, right? You mentioned...
Yeah, but again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but again, I started doing worship music. Sometimes I've been in events or in churches, and they asked me if I could do the worship. And of course, I love doing that. Actually, it's part of our routine and habit here at home, doing worship with my daughters and my wife. So they're learning doing that. So actually, my 12 years old and my 10 years old, they're gonna start at church as a part of the worship team with the teenagers. So, and I'm pretty excited for that. It's not that I reject that. Of course not. It's part of my life. But when I write music, when I write songs, for some reason I go that way.
Mm-hmm. And so the cool thing is that it seems like when you write, the outlet is different than a church, right? So opening for Alejandro Sanz, I bet it's a way different crowd than playing worship in a church setting. So that's awesome, because I think you still have a focus that when you're writing, you might have that audience in mind, but you also have the message in mind. And I don't know, this could be me maybe putting words into you or trying to get it out of you, but I feel like what I witness, it's a little bit of like people here. So for example, I mean, I love this guy, and I'm just going to mention him because this is the one that comes to mind, right? And I still think he's incredible. I'm not discrediting him at all. It's just what I see happening, right? Michael W. Smith. To me, he was an amazing songwriter, like unbelievable songwriter back in the 90s, even early 2000s, I mean. And then lately, I feel like his music has been more like, okay, I'm doing worship because that's what people want to hear. And I think he's lost a little bit of that that passion to say, can I break my brain a little bit to writing a song and including a message and thinking about a story for the sake of people just want to hear me sing about Jesus, right? So in a sense, I feel like maybe that's the easy route, because you have sustainability in the market, maybe, in a sense.
Exactly. Well, this is an interesting thing, because in the beginning I told you about the technique you need to write songs. And the other thing is inspiration. And sometimes I mean, when I write a song, I can, if I think if I have a goal, let's say I wanna get to that type of people, I use a technique thinking and that type of people. If I want to do worship, I use my technique and what I've learned about how to write songs, and I try to get to that people with certain type of lyrics, let's say in worship music. But sometimes it's hard to understand the heart of the composers. Let's say that Michael W. Smith, I'm not saying that he is doing that because of the mainstream in the Christian world, but maybe he's being inspired all these days because he sees the need in people to worship in God, and that is amazing. But I've seen the other day a guy told me, "Hey, you know what? You're gonna laugh on this." He told me, "I need to do more music and worshiping music and this and blah blah blah." And I asked him, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool that you're starting again." And he said, "Yeah, I need more money." that's his expression, and I was shocked, because are you saying that because you see a need in people and get connected with and engage with God, or because you need money? In my case, I'm an accountant, so I do accounting. Sometimes it's been hard for me to keep doing music because it's not easy. Well, not really hard, because God is faithful. He's always there providing. That's amazing. That's another story. But in my case, I've been doing accounting always parallel to my music world since I was 20. But well, when you have a call from God, you're gonna have to work hard sometimes if the situation is not easy for you economically or in other areas. So I don't know if I'm explaining myself, because I have a lot of ideas in my mind, but
no, that's
probably
good.
This could extend a lot. But yeah, it's motivation. It's a very important thing in our lives. So if we are motivated and make that the people connect with God through worship music, That's the most beautiful thing.
Wow. Yes. Okay. So yeah, you're kind of like, in a sense, taking it back to it's a heart issue, right? So it's not about whether you're doing worship or rock music. It's about where is your heart, right? So if your heart is in worship just because you can make money, then maybe you gotta check your heart and your intentions and your motives to see why.
Yeah, because if I want to appeal to certain type of people, in the Christian world, in Spanish right now, there's some type of movement. I mean, I'm not gonna name anything, but where we already know how to appeal to some type of people, some niche, and I can write that type of music pretty easy because it's pretty easy, and just doing a beat, and I can probably make a lot of money doing that. But it's not part of my essence. Well, it's not part of me. So it's if I'm thinking in strategies, that's amazing. You need to do strategies, marketing strategies, etc. But at the same time, you need to get inspired of what is happening in people's heart.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay, so I want to learn from you, like, being a Latino, being in the United States, almost like what you're saying is you have a calling to music, and you're calling from God. Like you receive that from God and you say, I'm on a mission. This is about the gospel. There's an audience that I'm reaching that really worship won't, right? Like being in front of like Alejandro Sanz fans. I mean, you're reaching an audience, but also this idea that you're like paying yourself, right? Like you work, you have that work ethic of like, I'm an accountant. This is how I make a living. This is how I support my family. But I also have a calling. And I feel like that's so inspirational, man. I feel like maybe a lot of people have to learn from that, and especially here in America, right? But I would love to learn about how do people receive what you do here in the U.S.? Like living here 20 years, being surrounded by maybe like American people around you, and then when they find out, oh, that's what you do, like you're an accountant, but you're also like you travel the world and you do music and you open for Alejandro Sanz in Miami. I mean, that's pretty epic. Like, how do people take that? Like, do they see? I don't know. Just like, what's your experience? Like, is it relevant?
Well, yeah, that's interesting because sometimes, and I understand that part, when you talk to leaders in churches, I have a lot of friends who are pastors, and sometimes I have talked about these type of experiences with them, and yeah, they're happy and seeing what God has been doing in my life and with my ministry, touching people and more. At the same time, some people can criticize, did I say right? Criticize that type of participations or performances. But this is the reality. The people like you, like me, who is more like the audience, this is the reality. The people is listening constantly music, not just Christian music, and it's amazing thing that people is always trying to listen to good music with good message. So when I've been in this type of events, Christian people who I know, they are glad for me for what God is been doing in my life. So I have some interviews or I've been in podcasts like this one with secular or not Christians shows, and it's amazing how people support me, sending messages, and they know that type of podcasts or interviews are not Christians, that the hosts are not Christians, and that's amazing how they try to get involved in the conversations in a very wise way, and that's when I see that, it's the best thing, because you see that the people is not just trying to support you. I mean, they've been trying to help you and achieve that goal to engage people with God. So yeah, that's been my experience. In the other hand, when I talk to English-speaking people, if I have a lot of friends who are not Christians, so when I share with them my experiences traveling the world and doing music, they get connected with me and they go and look for my music. And it's funny because sometimes there's a lot of Rodrigo Silvas in Spotify and Apple Music, and sometimes they get confused. Like, hey, I didn't know that you used to sing in Portuguese. Because there's a guy from Brazil named Rodrigo Silva too who sings in Portuguese. The other day, a friend told me, hey, she's a friend for years. I know her since I was 20. I'm 47 now. And she told me the other day, Rodrigo, I didn't know that you recorded how do you say homenaje? How do you say homenaje?
Homage.
How do you say?
Homage?
Homage or to Pedro Infante, because there's a guy, Rodrigo Silva, in Colombia who recorded a Pedro Infante project in honoring Pedro Infante. And I was laughing, no, that's another Rodrigo Silva. But at the same time, she was like pretty glad, supporting me. That's amazing, Rodrigo, that you're not just doing very Christian music, but you're opening to other paths in the good way of this. So yeah, I have a lot of pretty good experiences with people. I've been feeling always supported by I would say fans. But, yeah,
that's awesome. Okay, so what would be maybe like the hardest thing you've faced being here in the United States as a musician? Like, what has been like some of the struggles, maybe like trying to make music, but here in the United States, what have you witnessed, or has it been pretty easy, pretty stable, or have you need to overcome any hurdles?
The hardest thing is English interviews like this one. Just kidding. No, I'm playing. Well, honestly, I've been enjoying the ride. I mean, for me, there's no moments where I would say this being hard for me. I mean, I see that type of challenges as challenges, an opportunity for me to grow. So maybe because I have that mentality, I don't feel overwhelmed or stressful under different circumstances. Well, before the pandemic, probably this one was a kind of stressful thing for me. Before the pandemic, I was traveling a lot. I was traveling every weekend, like 48 or 40 weekends of the year. I was traveling here in the US, performing or doing concerts or going to churches, to events, and I was very tired. I've been traveling, so my two daughters are growing, and when I was traveling, I used to think, well, I'm doing this instead of being with my family right now. So that was a little bit stressful for me. So when the pandemic started, I know it wasn't a pretty good experience for most of the world, but for me, it was a moment to rest. It was a break for what I was doing. So once the pandemic finished, there was again the opportunity to start traveling. But I said, no, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna see. I was like expecting what would happen next. And now, after months that the pandemic finished, we're just trying to start traveling. But in order to answer your question, yeah, the most struggling moments were that I was tired traveling a lot since 2014. Of course, I started traveling since 2003 or 2005, But in those moments with no kids, me and my wife, we were, enjoying and all that type of experiences. But once my daughter started growing up, I was like, oh man, I need to be spending more time with my family. That's the most stressful moments for me.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's so good. I love that, and I think, I've talked to my friend. I have a lot of musicians friends too, because kind of like same thing. Maybe you're on the like successful side of music, especially like Spanish music. Because it's funny. This is kind of like side note, but I came here with America with the dream to make music. But then
really,
I think it was hard because it's like, okay, I'm doing music in Spanish, but there wasn't really an audience for that back then, especially like rock music and indie rock and in Spanish overall, right? When everybody was maybe listening to just like Maná or Caifanes, so it was really hard to break through with your own songs and stuff like that. But regardless, I feel like...
But you know what?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, there's a lot of opportunity now that you mentioned that. There's a lot of opportunity. Actually, we're trying to get into that type of events or concerts, opening for that type of bands. We're working on that pretty hard with a friend of mine who is a promoter here in the US. So now that you mentioning that, that's a good opportunity as a musician in Latino. That if you like rock, because that type of bands like La Gusana Ciega, I don't know if you heard about them,
yes.
like Caifanes, well, not anymore. Yeah, that's weird, right? But a lot of bands that are playing in the secular world, if there's a niche, there are pretty good niche of people here in the US, and that's a pretty good opportunity for us, for me, that I want to expose to the people positive music with the Christian values. That's a good opportunity to get into that type of events and perform, and that way they can see the light of Jesus. That for me, that's my goal these days.
Wow. Yes, I love that. Okay, so I think I'll stick with that. And so what do you think? Just I would kind of like start wrapping it up right here, but like it seems like you have a goal, you have a purpose for your music, like you're very focused with giving a message, bringing the gospel, knowing the audience that you're like you want to be in front of, in a sense. Being a Latino in the United States, now there's more Latinos here. Like you're saying, there's more opportunities to play the type of songs that you do, while still offering, like you said, light and hope. So what would you say is what made you follow Jesus in that sense? Why pursue Jesus, but still like want to put it into songs? Like what was it about your life, your own journey that says, this is so, like Jesus is so compelling. I want to sing about him, maybe without mentioning his name, but to offer light to other people. Like what was compelling about him?
Yeah, well, I mentioned Jesus' name in my songs, but let's say 10%, 20%. It's not that I'm trying to hide his name, because his name is over all names. But yeah, as a composer doing art, for me, sometimes you need to let the people discover what is behind the lyrics, and the people is pretty smart to do that. So how I started, in other words, how I started, since I was a child, I was pretty exposed to music, because my family from my mom's side, in my mom's side family, there's a lot of musicians. My grandpa was a pretty good musician, and when at the same time in my childhood, I experienced different things in my life. My happy moments, my stressful moments, but at the same time, I was a kid, like a very talented kid. Not anymore, but those days I remember that at school, always the teachers, used to make me participate in musical events because I used to sing a lot. But when I was at home, we had pretty happy moments because we used to go visit my family in the south of Mexico. Not south, I mean in Sinaloa. They're from Sinaloa, and I have pretty good memories of my family. And as we said in the beginning, I'm original from Nogales, and I grew up there. So Nogales is a small city in the border with the US, with Arizona, and I was exposed to a mix of cultures, but with all these elements on the table, I was experiencing also a lot of domestic violence at home because my father and my dad basically was an alcoholic. So every day or every other day, he used to come home drunk. So always we experienced a lot of domestic violence because of that. He used to hit my mom, and there's a lot of bad memories of that. But when I got to my teenage days, when I started in high school, I remember I met a boy who told me, you know what, I'm part of this Christian church. And when he said that, I told him, you know what, I want to go with you to the church. And my first time in that church, I was amazed because I felt the presence of God there. It was real. So I remember asking God if, because there was a pastor saying about the reality of God. And I asked God, if what this guy is saying about you, if for real you are real, I want you to do these changes in my home, in my house. And the first thing I asked God was, please, I want a miracle. I don't want my dad drinking anymore. And I was amazing after that because since that moment, my dad never never got drunk again home.
Wow.
So so the things started changing. But there's more. You know what? When my wife met you for the first time, when I was 15, she's my wife Gladys. Since then, I met her when we were 15. We was in a concert, by the way. We were in a concert, a secular concert, and she used to say that in those days, of every 100 words I was mentioning, only one was normal, because I used to say a lot of bad words and I was very different. But when I had that experience at church, when I saw God's reality, everything changed in me. I mean, in my house, things starting changing also. And then since that moment, I started at church, and I never stopped. I started playing drums when I was 17, and when I was 19, I started at the worship team as the worship leader. And as I said before, I started writing songs, and I started writing songs of my own life, my experiences, how God transformed my life. That's why I've been sharing that type of lyrics, that type of music since then, because I had that experience. I know what that means when you're struggling in life, when there's no hope for you, when you're in darkness, and rapidly God does something for you, and you see the light of the Lord.
Wow. Fire right there, man. Rodrigo, that's so profound. And I think I just want to give you my takeaway, and then we're going to go to our emojis to finalize the episode. But I think my takeaway is along the lines of, like, God can transform people. And in this case, it's almost like, I think there's a verse in the Bible that's something that la oración del justo puede mucho. You know, the prayer of the righteous man can do a lot, for lack of better translation. Yeah. But I think God honored that, right? When you prayed and things started, God started moving in your family. That's amazing. But not only that, I mean, to see that years and years later, here you are writing songs that are about that light, and God is putting you in front of an audience that it's probably not your typical church audience, right? And maybe mostly Latino because you're building on your experience and who you are, and you're from Nogales, Mexico. So God is utilizing that to put you in front of people to bring His light, and that's so awesome. I think I think that's my takeaway. And as we go to our emojis, I want you to think about the next generation. And I love that you have daughters who are, around that young age, 10, 13. My kids are also 13, 11, 7 years old. And I think for a lot of them, maybe they're still to experience God move in their lives and maybe hear that calling to what God can do with their talents and things like that. So I would say, as we go to the emojis, focus on the next generation, focus on your kids, on my kids, on what your answers would be. Okay. So we're going to start off with, I think it's the blasphemous. Oh yeah. Blasphemous emoji. So Rodrigo Silva, not the Portuguese and not the Colombian Rodrigo Silva, the one in Tucson, Arizona. What is the worst idea that you can think of in the pursuit of God's call in your life? Even maybe the music journey. What would be the worst idea, the most blasphemous that you can think of?
That I can think right now as a society in the world, right?
Yeah, whatever. Just think of your kids. What would you tell them? Avoid this. This is bad. This is the worst.
Well, it's interesting because for me, it's like a blasphemy these days. Always has been this happening, but using God's name to manipulate people's will. Politically, religiously. So for me, that's like a blasphemy. So, and sometimes us, as musicians, who are in the music industry, we get involved in that game. So yeah, blasphemy for me is manipulating people's will.
Wow. Skeptical emoji. So what would you tell people? Be careful with this, skepticism, almost I question this. Exactly, that face you just did.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I did. Well, I see a forced skepticism. That's interesting because it's more convenient for me not to believe. It's a forced skepticism because sometimes I talk with people saying, yeah, I want to get close to God, but I'm not sure. It's because it's more comfortable for them to be living that way. They say, I prefer not to believe because it's more comfortable and enjoyable to live as I please. We have, in that way, it's like we have lost respect for God. So people have become skeptical also due to institutionalism. Sometimes the people say, no, I don't want to be part of that thing because it's weird. Religion that claims, the religion that claims not to be a religion, and on the other hand, there are many elements involved in this in order to make the people feel skeptical, like the political matters. People associate being a believer these days with being part of a political party, and that discredits the path of faith.
So good. Inspired emoji. So what gives you hope? What inspires you?
Okay.
Or where do you want to point people to see inspiration?
You know what? I'm very inspired when I see my daughters sharing their dreams with me. When they say, that I want to do this. I want to achieve these goals in my life. I want to do music. I want to do, when you're a kid, you think in different things, but that inspires me a lot. I'm also inspired when I see the people with humble hearts. I know I'm not God to see people's heart, but you can feel, you can notice when people is humble in their hearts. And I also get inspired by, you're gonna say how cursi, I don't know how to say in English.
Cheesy.
So how cheesy, yeah. I'm inspired by the sunsets that bring me peace to my soul. I love to go walking every sunset, every evening, walking with my have a little dog, which is she barks a lot. But yeah, I get inspired for all those type of things. But mainly when I see my daughters sharing me their dreams, because it's part of God's plan. Dreaming, I mean, like Joseph in the Bible.
So good. Holy. So, what's a holy idea according to Rodrigo Silva?
Oh man, I wasn't expecting this. Okay, holiness. You know what? For me, holiness is transformation. It's transformation. Because, and to become better, it's necessary to change. That's what happened to my life. I was sharing with you about my childhood, how it changed. So, and change for the better, because sometimes people change not necessarily for the better. So, to distance ourselves from spiritual mediocrity, if I can say it that way, to distance ourselves from selfishness, it's necessary to be born a new or rebirth each day. So I think I was saying that concept to you yesterday in the Spanish podcast, that it's necessary to be reborn, to be transformed every day. So I remember I heard a guy, I don't remember who was him, that says, let me try to translate it in my mind. He said the best evidence of a new birth in the Christian life is not only repeating a prayer, but a transformed life. So for me, holiness is transformation, and that's part of my goal with my music, sharing with people my experiences, my life, so that way they can change their life too.
Love it. And lastly, the divine emoji, the highest idea Rodrigo Silva can think of.
Divine from divinity, right? Because there's concepts behind that word. Well, think of divinity like, for me, it's like thinking, it's like a symphony playing, a beautiful song that touches your emotions. It's like a guide that persuades us to walk the right path in life. And you know what? It's just like that song when it gives you light every day. Bring in that light brings you clarity when you don't see because it's dark. So is that the same way that how God works in our life? So and the other concept for me about divinity is love, and now for me the most divine and profound concept in life is definitely love, and God is love. So we should look for that divine source, source of divine of love every day, and stay connected with it. So in other words, we need to be connected with God. So yeah. I made it.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yes, sir. We made it through the 5 emojis. My friends, amigos, from Costa Mesa, California. My name is Beto Gudiño. And Rodrigo, where can people find your stuff? Like, do you want them to go to your website? And you said the song is in English or Spanish, the Resilientes?
I have two versions, one in Spanish and the other one is in English. Resilientes in Spanish, resilient in English. So you can find it in every streaming platform like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Deezer, etc. And Rodrigo Silva, the guy with this face, not the guy from the guys from other countries. Yeah,
the original.
You can find me also. Yeah, exactly. You can find me also. Find me in Facebook as Rodrigo Silva Music, Twitter Rod Silva Music. There's a lot of options. What's the other one? Instagram
Threads.
Rodrigo Silva Band.
Yes.
Huh?
Threads. Twitter.
Oh, Threads. Twitter. Yes. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I forgot that part. TikTok. And TikTok is Rodrigo Silva Music too. YouTube, Rodrigo Silva Music. So yeah, I hope you can find me there and you like my music.
Awesome. We do like it. All right. Let's see you guys on the next one. And I want to say, if you like this episode, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Visit us at christianpodcast.com. Like I said, we have the Spanish stream where we did an interview, my wife and me, with Rodrigo Silva, completely in Spanish. It's awesome. So check it out on our website. But please give us a 5-star review only. If it's not 5-star, don't even give us a review. Move on to the next podcast. Okay, go listen to something else. Well, thank you for being here. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.